This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about severe caffeine addictions, the Great Alfalfa Famine of '82, and a theory about Susan. All that and more as we watch Season 2, Episode 9 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I am one of your hosts, and joining me today, as always, is my co-host and my brother. What's up, Imran?
I'm good, sis. You got me at a good time. I just got off this Zoom call with the TV Rewatch Podcast Union there.
Union. What are you guys fighting for?
We had some grievances. We were trying to negotiate some things. We didn't get anything, but it went well other than that.
And did they all talk with that accent too?
They did, which is largely why nothing gets done, because we just giggle at each other going, hey, why are you talking like that? I don't know. Why are you talking? It's a union in Chicago. We're watching podcasts. Yeah,
well,
it was very productive meeting.
Appropriate for this week's episode of Perfect Strangers. We are talking about Season 2, Episode 10. The episode is called The Rent Strike.
Strike. Okay, I'm going to talk normal. I'll talk normal. The TV Guide description this week, Sophia reads, Balky and Larry organize a rent strike, hoping Twinkasetti will make repairs, but he responds by turning off the electricity.
Oh,
what?
No.
Sounds a little bit illegal.
What a jerk.
Twinkasetti.
This episode, as every other episode, stars Bronson Pinchot and Mark Lynn Baker, and this episode aired on December 10th, 1986.
Act 1 opens in the apartment building in the morning. Larry is coming out of the bathroom, and Balky is washing the dishes, shining the plate, Sophia, and he goes, it's true. You can see yourself. And right away, this is a reference. I don't know if people caught this reference to a classic commercial for the popular dishwashing liquid Joy.
Yes, and of course, he says this line as he holds up a plate. He's shining a plate, holds it up in front of his face and looks into it. And I guess he sees himself. Yeah, Joy dishwashing.
These commercials ran from like the 50s to the 70s. I was watching some earlier. They're really weird. Commercials were like a minute long in the 70s. They were very long. It just seems too long. Yeah, but the ladies were like, you could really see your face.
So it's morning time, and Larry is cranky. He is in a bad mood. He has bits of toilet paper stuck to his face. He goes straight for a cup of coffee for the coffee pot, and he says, did you make coffee? And Balky says, make coffee? What do I look like? A percolator? And then he does his Balky slap on the knee and gestures upward with both hands. Where do I come up with them?
Knee slapper.
And then Balky says, of course he's made the coffee because he knows that Larry can't even speak before he has his coffee. And this little nugget establishes at the start of the show that Larry is a coffee lover, is addicted to coffee, as many of us are. I relate to that a lot.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. Of course, you need your coffee. Don't talk to me.
Yes. And this, of course, is setting up explanation for his behavior later in the episode. But for now, we just learned that Larry is a coffee addict.
And needs it to function, which we'll see. So Larry, as you said, he's got little tiny bits of toilet paper stuck to his face. And Bucky's like, what is on your face? And he explains it's toilet paper because, why? Well, he cut himself shaving repeatedly because there's no hot water. Who did this make you think of instantly? Can I ask you? I think I want to know if you felt the same way. I see this. I think of one person right away.
Our Father?
Absolutely. I vividly remember. Why?
Little bits of blood and little bits of toilet paper on the face.
It's still a thing you can do. So,
do you do that? You're a person who shaves his face.
Now I have a beard now, so I not as much. But clearly, our father was just as good as a face shaver as Larry was, because he always had. I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you so bleedy all the time?"
Why was he so bleedy all the time?
I don't know. Maybe we had no hot water. I remember we had hot water. Anyways, the building has no hot water. Larry says he told Twinkasetti weeks ago the hot water heater was acting up. He even sent him a letter to complain. Balky says there's something wrong with the kitchen sink, too. And Larry goes, okay, what? And he goes over to the sink and leans over to check it out. It appears the sink is not draining. And then Larry and Balky have the classic running gag they do where Balky is trying to tell something to Larry, and Larry is
but doesn't Larry, but
will not
you're not
listen.
But
He's so arrogant. He says, Balky, turn the garbage disposal on. And he's like, Balky, just turn it on. And Balky goes, okay, and turns it on. And of course, dirty water shoots right into his face. That's what you get,
Very funny
Larry.
opening gag to this Act 1. And of course, unspoken subtext is that Larry realizes that's what Balky was going to tell him. And Balky's like, I told you so. Anyway, Balky runs over to grab this tool bell. He puts it around his waist. He says, I'll fix the sink. I'll fix the garbage disposal. And Larry is like, no, you don't have to. That's Twinkassetti's responsibility. And Balky says, but he fixed the doorbell as well and the oven, and now he'll fix the sink. And Larry's in shock. He says, you didn't have to repair all of those things. And Balky doesn't understand why Twinkassetti should fix all of their stuff.
Balky's pretty handy, though.
He's pretty handy. I mean, he's a sheep herder from Meepos.
I was impressed that
he can do everything.
Yeah, he knows how to use power tools, even.
And Larry, so he doesn't understand. He says, why should Twinkassetti have to fix all of the things in our apartment, our things? And Larry explains that it's not their apartment. Twinkassetti is the landlord, and as the landlord, he owns the building and everything inside it. And Larry says, why do you think we pay rent? And Balky says, for the privilege of sleeping indoors without livestock? And Larry says, kind of rolls his eyes, and he says, Balky, get off the boat and join the world. Okay, hold on, pause. Ouch. This is like more than a cutesy sort of like, I adore Balky comment. This is like a dig at Balky's foreignness. And I don't know what we're learning here. Is cranky Larry pre-coffee Larry? Is he a bit xenophobic? Is he a bit rude? Maybe.
He just called him a fob, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Get off the boat and join the world. And I don't think we've heard this from Larry before.
He hasn't had coffee.
Episode.
Look, I'll let it pass. He's very cranky. So the doorbell then rings, and it's Jennifer. It's not just Jennifer, mind you. It's Jennifer wrapped in nothing but a short towel. And the audience gasps as Balky gives us one of his wow. And
which is kind of like icky. That Balky just like looks her up and down in a towel and makes like a
show up in
cat call, a Miposian cat call.
Well, so and then Balky's like, I just love these bold American fashions. Larry goes, Balky, it's a towel. Balky goes, well, of course it is. Don't be ridiculous. And he goes, is it reversible? Which is, okay, that's a little sleazy. I think that's the joke. What's the joke?
I don't understand that joke. There was an audience laugh at that point.
He wants to see the other side of it.
The other side of the towel?
I don't know.
I think that's a little too much for the show.
I don't know. Well,
I wonder if it had a different meaning anyway. She needs to shower at their house. That's what she says. Her shower is broken. She's come to their apartment to use the shower. They live in the same building. We get it by now. First of all, her hair is perfect. She's not like, I mean, did she wake up, do her hair, and then decide she needed to take a shower?
That's what I thought was hilarious. She needed a shower, but her hair just looks amazing.
And secondly, why is she walking around in the apartment building in her bath towel? Who does that? Like, even if you're going to pick up the mail or something out to another apartment, wouldn't you put on like a longer bathrobe or some pajamas or something instead of just walking around in your towel? Who does that?
And maybe what floor does she live on?
How far did she have to travel to get to their apartment? Is it like a long hallway, another floor? But still, would you step foot outside of your own apartment?
No, it's drafty in the hallway. Jeez, I'd be chilly.
In a tiny bath towel?
And also, I think this establishes, like, this is the first time we know that Jennifer and Marianne live in the same building with them, right? Did we know that before?
Yeah, we kind of had hints of that where they would show up, but this is the first time it's explicit. It's a little more explicit because unless she came from a different... No. She has to be in the same building because her water's...
She came from across the street.
Yeah.
No, she's in the building, so she's like, she needs to use a shower. And Larry says, come on in, you can use the shower, but we only have cold water. And then, so she's frustrated. They're all frustrated. Larry suggests that they can get Twinkasetti to make all the repairs if they just band together. He says if enough people want to change something, they can. We stopped the war. We got the woman to vote. We came that close to getting daylight savings time all year round. We can do it. Is that true? I didn't know that reference. Is that a thing that actually happened?
I feel like it did almost happen, but
it must have happened.
Because daylight savings time, I have looked into this before, is just like has ridiculous reasons behind it, and it makes no sense.
Oh, they should have got rid of that. I wish we got that vote.
Yeah. So Balky says, but cousin, Mr. Twinkasetti is a landowner, and we are just lowly common peasants. And Larry says, Balky, this is a democracy. We're all created equally lowly and common. So there's another explainer setting up Balky's sort of love of democracy and what he learns later in this episode.
Another lesson that largely rings true today, too, a little bit.
We're all created equally lowly and common. Yes, there's no, in the system, in the ideal system of democracy, there should be no hierarchy like that. So Larry makes a plan. They're all just like standing around. Jennifer's still standing around the table making these plans. Larry says he's going to get all the tenants together and make a list of all the complaints and present that list to Twinkasetti. And he says he has to listen to us if we do that. Jennifer goes to the shower. Larry's like, I need more coffee. And we cut to the next scene. And in the next scene, we are in the dingy basement of their apartment building, and there are about a dozen tenants sitting around in the dingy basement on dingy basement furniture, and they're all worked up and complaining and chattering loudly about their complaints with their apartments. Okay, pause. Why are they meeting in the dingy basement?
I don't
Why
know.
is the town hall in the basement? Why, did no one want to host this meeting in their apartments or some other common space?
It is such a weird set.
Why are they in this dark, dingy basement?
It's really dark. There's the way they lit it, there's hard shadows on people's faces, not the most flattering.
Yeah, and they're sitting on like dirty sofas and storage chests.
It's so shady looking and unseemly, but it kind of reminds me of our basement in the building we grew up in Chicago. There's a pool table in the back. Remember we had a ping pong table?
Well, I mean, I wonder if this was the producers or directors. This might be thinking too much into it, but this was them trying to signal to the audience that organizing like that is a dark, seedy endeavor that is done in the shadows in secret. And maybe that was the sentiment in 1986 about organizing.
And they're trying to establish this building's a dump because Twinkasetti's your slumlord.
Right. Also important to note that in this crowd, we see both Susan and Jennifer and Marianne. So all three of these women are co-tenants of this
Oh my God,
apartment.
this blew my mind. I have many thoughts. Wait till afterwards in our post-recap. I have a theory about Susan, but now I thought we had seen the last of her. Now all of them are there together in one room. It's wild.
They don't seem to really acknowledge each other or have any interactions in the dialogue with each other, but they're both there.
It's very strange. So Larry's down there kind of up in front. He has a notepad in hand, and he quiets them down and says, they have to approach this in a civilized manner. Susan says she's been trying to get Twinkasetti to fix her ceiling for 3 years. An old cranky woman named Mrs. Schlegelmilch, it's the best name ever. Schlegelmilch says she's an old cranky lady. She says, dream on, the man's a rodent. And then Marianne goes, does anyone else's living room tilt to the right?
In a sweet, sweet Marianne voice.
I had an apartment like that. I don't know if you visited. Everything sloped down to the kitchen in the middle of the apartment. So, if you could you put a ball down, it would roll right down to the.
Oh boy!
So I know a little bit what this is like, what they're going through.
Balky stands up to say something, and we expect that he's also going to add to the complaints. But what he says is, "This is wonderful. Here we are, a group of total strangers brought together by a common cause in the pursuit of justice and the American way." And then he just sits down again, and he's sheepish. He's so proud to be part of something so American, of organizing, of protest, and he considers this, a big democratic value. And Larry just looks at him and he goes, well, thank you for sharing that.
Nothing to do with anything. And then an old cranky man from the back asks, who's going to give these grievances to Twinkacetti? He's not doing it. He says, Marianne says they need a leader. Balky, of course, suggests Cousin Larry could be their leader. Susan tells Larry he'd be perfect, and Jennifer agrees, saying, yes, Larry, you reek of leadership, which makes Larry blush and get a little shy. He goes, oh, really? Well, maybe I do reek a little. To which Balky goes, cousin, who's kidding who? You reek all the time. I love the use of the word reek because it's correct technically in both
yes, you
both
reek
wordplay.
all the time
Great
of
wordplay.
leadership. Yes. Then Balky says to the crowd, all in favor of Cousin Larry, say Bagda. And everyone raises their hand and goes, Bagda.
That's how you vote.
Which, if anyone is particularly fluent in Miposian, let us know what Bagda means. I imagine it just means yes.
Bagda, I voted twice. Whoops. Sorry. So Larry,
that's not democratic of you.
Larry agrees to be the leader. He starts to give a speech confidently now. But with bravado, saying how Twinkacetti must live up to his leases and how they will insist that he fix everything on their list. And while he's giving the speech, of course, Twinkie silently steps into the basement on the platform behind him. Larry doesn't notice until he turns to put his hand on the railing and feels Twinkie's hand and goes, and we should be taking our Tupperware orders. How many cold cut keepers do you want? 3, 4, 5. But Twinkie's not buying it.
Twinkacetti races down the steps and comes right in, stands right in Larry's face in one of those comical, like, in-your-face close moments, and he goes, Tupperware, huh? Cranky Twinkacetti. And Larry suddenly is not the confident leader anymore. He's back to his nervous, panicky Larry, and he tells Twinkacetti that they've gathered in the basement because they have grievances. Twinkacetti grabs the notepad out of Larry's hands and he starts reading the list. Leaky roof, worn out carpet, clogged disposal. And then Twinkacetti starts this mock sob story. He said he'd love to fix all the things, but he has a cash flow problem this week, and he dramatically launches into this telling of a story about how both his grandmothers went in for heart transplants. Mrs. Schlegel-Milch, at that point, Mrs. Schlegel-Milch rolls her eyes and she goes, no, please. But Balky, dear sweet Balky, falls for it, and he goes over to Twinkacetti to console him, and he says, oh, you poor, poor man. And then he turns to the crowd and he says, and we think we have problems. And then Larry, again, goes, Balky, you must be the poster child for the hopelessly naive.
Molly goes, must you be the poster child for the hopelessly naive?
Must you
and he
be?
Goes, Twinkacetti probably sold his grandma's. But yeah, there's some jerky lines from Larry.
Yeah, he's being cranky toward Balky today. Anyway, Balky is shocked to hear that Twinkacetti, and he turns to Twinkacetti and says, you lied about your nanas. And now Balky is upset too because no one lies about their nanas.
Ernie Sabella is great. It's got some great lines. So Twinkacetti finally drops his act and he turns against them and he calls them ingrates. He goes, here's what I think about your list of grievances. And he tears off the page right in front of them, throws it, crumples it on the floor. Man, and the cranky old dude in the back goes, let's get him. And they all rush Twinkacetti for some reason. Like, what are they going to do? Like, they're going to attack him?
Yeah, even Jennifer, lunges toward him with her arms. What is she going to do to him?
There's commotion, and Larry's trying to stop him, and then he cuts the tension with the funniest line, and everything comes down. You just hear him go, Mrs. Schlegel-Milch. Mess around with Schlegel-Milch. She will rough you up. And then he goes, people, you're turning into an ugly mom. And then he looks at Jennifer and goes, well, except for you. And then she smiles and walks back and sits down. But what were they going to do to Twinkacetti?
What were they going to do? I don't know.
String him up? You're going to gut him?
Let's get him and do what? Yeah.
Then what happens? This is what mobs never think out beforehand.
Right.
You know? They're all into let's get this done. But what are you going to do when you actually get to the guy?
Yes, and that's something we can come back to a little bit later in the show as well. So Larry manages to calm them down. They all take their seats again on that dingy furniture. And Larry says, listen, we can still work within the system. Balky agrees and says he learned about this form of protest in his citizenship class. And then he tells the whole room about the Boston Tea Party. And this is how he says it. He says, the people are angry with King George because they pay him tax money, but he don't listen to them. So they protest by they get together and they dip his tea bags in the filthy, dirty harbor water. And they don't pay the tax money, which is a great rendition of the Boston Tea Party.
Sure.
And then Balky suggests that the tenants should do a similar protest by they get together and don't pay their rent money. And he turns to Larry and says, "What would you call that, Cousin Larry?" And Larry says, "Well, I'd call it a rent strike." And Balky says, "Cousin Larry calls a rent strike."
Oh, boy. Everyone suddenly bursts out chanting, "Rent strike, rent strike." And Twinkle said he's fuming and Larry's freaking out. And Twink goes, "Okay, Appleton, you don't know who you're dealing with here." And he leaves the basement as everyone is cheering rent strike and clapping and dancing around, pumping their arms in the air. And Balky goes, he's looking at this and he's learning a lesson. He goes, "This democracy, I like it." Balky joins them dosey-doing around the basement with Schlegel-Milch.
With Mrs. Schlegel-Milch. And blackout, end of Act 1. Act 2 starts back in the guy's apartment. And it's cold. It's very cold. How do we know that? Balky is sitting on the couch, all bundled up in Meposian winter wear, like a cape, a square, like fuzzy hat.
No bullet
everything.
hat. He's got a different hat.
No bullet hat, but like like a Soviet-esque kind of square fur hat.
With a lot of faux fur, I imagine, or real animal fur.
And on the coffee table in front of him is a single candle that's lit, and he's holding a frying pan over the candle like he's cooking something with a can over the candle. And Dimitri is also sitting on the coffee table, and Dimitri's wearing these red earmuffs.
Yes.
Dimitri, of course, being his stuffed sheep that we see repeatedly.
Dimitri tied into the scene. Lovely.
Love it. So Larry comes out of his bedroom wrapped in a blanket that's pink, by the way, wrapped in a pink blanket, and he's shivering. And he comes and he sits with Balky on the couch, and that's when we learn that it's 25 degrees in the apartment, and we know that because Balky has checked.
Larry's like, "Why is the furnace off? Why didn't my electric blanket work? Why are you cooking over a candle?" Balky says, "Twinkie said he turned off the heat and electricity, and he's cooking the eggs." And it's so funny. He goes, "How do you like your egg? Loose, I hope." It's just a runny egg slowly cooking. And Larry goes, "Twinkie said he's plain dirty. Nobody can survive in these conditions." He takes Balky's candle over to warm his hands around it. Isn't this illegal? Technically, you can't do this as a landlord.
We need a legal expert to comment on this.
Although if they don't pay the rent, then they're breaking the contract for. I don't know. I just feel like you can't do that, and when it's cold, you can turn the heat off.
I'm not so well versed on the legal ramifications of rent strikes, but I don't know. Maybe we, if anyone out there is a lawyer,
somebody write in.
Who's listening, write in and tell us. So the next part is a little bit interesting to me, like a fascinating insight followed by a hilarious example.
This is great.
Balky says, "The trouble with you Americans is that you can't take a little hardship," which I think is
agree.
a very valid point.
I think it's a very valid point. Yeah,
coming from someone from another country.
Yeah.
It's true. Like first world problems is what we say now.
Yeah,
I don't think that phrase existed in 1986.
Yeah.
But then he goes on with this hilarious example. He says, in Mipos, they lived with hardship constantly. And he says, take the Great Alfalfa Famine of 82.
Oh, it was rough.
Wait a minute. 82 was just 4 years prior to when this story is taking place. But anyway, he's speaking about it as if it was like some great thing in history. And he says, hungry sheep staring into space, hungry men staring back at them. Mama asked me to help out by selling fig cakes on the street corner, and we only have just the one road running through my village, so I had to walk 50 miles to find a street corner.
I love that line.
And by the time I get there, I eat all my fig cakes.
I eat all my figgy cakes.
And he says, now that is true hardship. And Larry, in the third dig at Balky in this episode, says, no. True hardship is listening to that story.
He's very mean to Balky in this episode.
He's being
repeatedly,
so mean to
and
Balky.
Balky's just taking it. But I love that story. There's only one street corner. I walked 50 miles before I got to the corner. It's so funny. And I love just how we get to learn more about Mipos. It's always great. So Larry gets up to make some coffee because, of course, we as established he cannot function without coffee. Balky goes, Twinkie said he turned off the water, so you can't have coffee either. Now Larry is panicked. He checks the kitchen faucet. No water. He runs frantically back to the living room, clutching a round tin of coffee. He's going, oh my God, I have to have coffee to cope, to exist. I need it to, what's that thing you call when you make up things in your mind? Think. I can't think. He says he's going to go to the coffee shop on the corner. Balky goes, it's not open yet. Larry goes, damn, I have to have coffee. He runs to the kitchen. He goes, I'll make coffee with ginger ale. Ew, first of all.
Ew.
That's weird. Balky reminds him that, look, you can't heat it up even if you wanted to. Larry goes, they'll make a fire. Balky says they have no firewood. Not prepared for winter in Chicago. I don't know.
Yeah, they have a fireplace and it's winter. Why don't they have firewood?
And I believe the fireplace has been on in certain episodes before, and we'll see it actually on.
We have seen it on once before.
But look, maybe they're just in between firewood runs.
Maybe. But the other thing is, like we had in the beginning of this episode, we established that Larry is a coffee addict, and so am I.
Yes.
But this is like beyond addict. Like he is freaking out. That so much that he can't even wait till the coffee shop opens. Like he needs it right that moment. That's a bit extreme. But anyway, Larry is like very frantic now.
Caffeine's a hell of a drug.
Caffeine's a hell of a drug. If it were me, I'd just go back to sleep until the coffee shop opened.
That's a good way to deal with it too.
You know, Larry's but panicking. It's classic frantic Larry now. He's clutching this coffee tin. He says, I know, we'll break up the furniture for firewood. So he puts down the coffee tin and he goes to pick up this chair. And Balky very smoothly, as Larry's panicking, gets up from the couch, makes his way to where Larry is. And just as Larry lifts the chair above his head, intending to smash it down in front of him, Balky grabs the chair
right on
and
the back
Larry
swing.
ends up swinging his arms on the back swing. Yeah. And Larry ends up swinging his arms down without the chair. And Balky just says, I don't think so. So this was such brilliant physical comedy, but it was perfectly timed. Like it was a delicate ballet dance because Bronson Pinchot was on the other side of the set and he had to make it over just in time to grab the chair. And I just wondered how many times they had to practice that.
I was going to say it was a comedy ballet. Two things I love is the Balky's calmness contrasting Larry's franticness, and then this smooth, just like he knows exactly what's going to happen, and he's right there, the first time, and pulls the chair in the perfect arc. It's so good. It's just like a cartoon when they do it well.
Comedy ballet, yeah, it was very cartoonish, as many of their physical comedy scenes are.
Balky goes, cousin, we're not going to burn the furniture to make a cup of coffee. I think you've reached the end of the pier again.
Again? Balky is so used to frantic Larry by now. Like he knows the routine.
Larry's like, he's in shock. He grabs the tub of coffee and cradles it in the chair as Balky wraps the blanket around Larry like he's a trauma victim. Yeah. At this point, Balky tells Larry he's got to get a grip, sits him down on the chair by the fireplace, Larry says Balky's right. He's got to get control, keep his wits. And he sits there and he waits. Then he just opens the tub of coffee, grabs a handful of grounds, and just puts it in his mouth.
Shoves it in his mouth.
What is going on?
Have you ever been that desperate for coffee that you put you ate a handful of
First of
coffee
all,
grounds?
I don't know how it didn't immediately start choking and coughing that up because that does not taste good. But he looks.
Well, maybe it wasn't really coffee. But.
It's so effective because he looks crazy, and Balky just looks at him and goes, "Cream and sugar."
He's chewing it like a madman. There's coffee grounds all over his face like a child.
You know what that did remind me of? This is what I did like that. Oh, Ovaltine all day long, son.
Yeah.
I would do that with
Ovaltine out of the jar.
Dry.
Yeah. But not with like a handful. You would at least use a spoon.
At least use a spoon, and it wouldn't choke you up. But Larry has a severe caffeine addiction.
Yeah. So... Which I think was just like something they set up for this episode, but because it's a prop throughout the whole
I hope
episode.
they use Ovaltine for him instead of real coffee because you can't do that and not choking.
Okay, cut to the next scene. We're in everyone's favorite Ritz discount. Twinkassetti's there by himself, and he's on the phone with his bookie named Vinny.
Of course.
And he's making a bet on a horse race. And we just hear him assure Vinny that, yes, he's good for the money.
Is he?
And then he hangs up the phone and he kind of like scoffs.
I'm not
like
buying it.
He bought it.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
So then Balky and Larry enter the shop and they're defiant. They're ready to confront Twinkassetti because they've had it. And they're all bundled up in their winter gear, both Posey and American. Larry has coffee grounds all over his face still.
on his face. It's
and
hilarious.
they make this dramatic entry into the front door, and they're standing there. Now I have to pause right here and make a note, because this entry scene, just this quick moment where they enter, is one of the funniest scenes featured in the many blooper reels that are available on YouTube. And it's so funny because in the bloopers they enter defiantly, and then Larry with coffee all over his face, like they're very close to each other as they often are in these scenes. Larry just turns to look at Balky, and then they both lose it, and they both start cracking up, and then they go back out the door to do it again.
So I thought I read somewhere there was a take where Balky like wiped the coffee off his face, and then they cracked up too, which is why also, if you notice, when it cuts, like all the coffee's gone on Larry's face, like there's no more coffee. So they were messing with it.
So check it out on YouTube if you want to see some very funny.
I'll try to find that link and put it in the show notes.
Blooper reel. So Twinkasetti greets them, and then he goes, "Did we sleep all warm and snuggly? I sure did." So terrible.
Twinkie is great.
Rubbing it in.
Yeah. Larry tells off Twinkasetti, but he can't think of words because he hasn't had his coffee yet. So Twinkasetti asks if they're ready to give up. Balky now starts to take command, pushes Larry aside, and goes to Twinkasetti. He goes, "You know, amigos, we have a word for people like you." How did he say that? He goes, "You're gemulten muchatz."
Gemulten muchatz.
A gemulten muchatz. And then TC, he has so many funny lines where he's like, "Ooh, I'm scared." And then he goes, "What is the rigamorcatukas?" Which
is so funny because when Balky first said gemulten muchatz, I was like, that sounds like Yiddish.
It does, yes.
And then when Twinkasetti mocks it, it's even more Yiddish, like a rigamorcatukas.
What is a rigamorcatukas? And Balky goes, "It's a byproduct of swamp slime." Solid burn by Balky. That's pretty good. He called him swamp slime.
A byproduct, not even
slime. The product of swamp slime. It's so good.
So Larry starts to tell off Twinkasetti, and he tells him he's playing dirty, but even though he's playing dirty, they're not going to give in. And he starts saying all these things, but then he stops himself mid-sentence, and he does that classic Larry sniffing in the air, that frantic sniffing in the air, and he goes, "Is that fresh coffee I smell? Uh-oh." There is coffee there. And so then Twinkasetti points out a pot of hot, fresh coffee, and Larry runs over to it and starts pouring himself a cup. And then as he's pouring, Twinkasetti tells him it's $10 a cup.
Oh.
And Larry puts the coffee down and was like, "That is outrageous. Balky, lend me $5.
What is this, Starbucks? Yes.
Yeah, for real. That was my thought, too. Those are 2021 coffee prices for sure.
A venti mocha with 3 pumps. That's $10.
It was a barely 8-ounce old school styrofoam cup that he was filling. Funny line, because he's like, "That is outrageous, and let me find $5 more." So Balky goes over and grabs Larry by the collar of his jacket. This is a reversal of what we usually see. Usually it's Larry grabbing Balky, but this time Balky's grabbed Larry by the collar of his jacket, and he says, "Get a grip on yourself. You're going to pay $10 for a stupid beverage?" And Larry says, "Yes, and don't you ever call it stupid."
Stupid beverage.
Stupid beverage. So Larry pulls out $5 from his own pocket, and he gives it to me. He's like, "Here's for half a cup." And then he desperately starts chugging out of the coffee from that styrofoam cup. I guess in 1986, styrofoam was still acceptable.
Remember McDonald's and Burger King burgers used to come in styrofoam packages?
Boxes,
there was styrofoam everywhere. And it does seem really weird thinking about that. But crushing those cups was also very satisfying.
We didn't yet know
that it was going to last forever. Yeah, probably not.
I mean, someone must have known, but the public
knew. They weren't telling us. So suddenly, Larry's got half a cup of coffee in him, and he's got some confidence. He's lucid again. He's clicking. He confronts Twinkasetti, who has turned off their heat, water, electricity. Larry goes, "You think you're tough? You don't even know what tough is." He points at Balky. "This is tough. I am tough," he says. "In fact, I don't even need your stinking coffee." And then he crushes the cup out of strength, but it doesn't. And then he flicks it off his hand because it gets stuck. And then Balky goes, "You should see him after a second cup."
If he can crush a styrofoam cup now, imagine what he can do after a second cup.
I'll do a whole stack of plates. I'll crush. Twinkasetti is not impressed, and Larry says they're not giving in until Twinkasetti fixes everything on their list. Balky tells Twinkie he better start respecting Cousin Larry. And Twinkie goes, oh, but I do, Turnip. I respect Cousin Larry just as much as I respect Cousin Mo and Cousin Curly. As he walks away, first of all, Three Stooges reference, great.
Yes.
And then Balky goes, Cousin, why you don't introduce me to the rest of the family? Larry just takes a half breath and just goes, I forgot.
Hold on. Okay, first of all, this is hilarious
So
because one, in Balky's, in classic Balky fashion, he misses the reference, and two, in classic Larry response, he doesn't bother to explain it to him. He's just like, I forgot. But we already know from previous scenes and episodes that Balky
watches
knows a lot of
television.
TV
I was just gonna say that.
references. Why does he not know the Three Stooges?
This is one of the classic. It's because it's convenient to the joke, of course.
I guess.
But I was thinking the same thing right now. It's like when he watches Gilligan's Island.
Maybe they didn't get the Three Stooges on
He's
Meepos.
seen Three Stooges.
Which takes us to Act 3. And we are back inside Ritz Discount again. We find out that it's 7 o'clock in the morning. And Larry is there. He's wearing an all red sweatsuit with a collar, the kind we've seen him in before.
Right.
And he flips on the light, and he says, and when he flips on the light, we see all the tenants asleep in sleeping bags scattered around the floor around the store. And also there's a big camping tent set up right in the middle of the floor there. So they had all spent the night in the store because it's warmer in the store than it is in their apartments. Larry wakes everyone up and he reminds them that they're trespassing, and he's like, Balky, wake him up. So Balky is dressed for some reason in his Meeposian shepherd clothing, sheepherder outfit. I don't know why.
He's got work to do.
Maybe because sheepherders have to be warm when they're outside sleeping with the sheep.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff.
He has furry boots and things, too.
Yeah, but he also has shorts, like the Meeposian, like foreign-looking knee-length shorts, socks pulled up. He's got this cape.
You need the cape, of course. You need a sheepherding
and that
cape.
square hat that I spoke about, and he's got this curved cane shepherd stick thing. So he gets up and he starts prodding all the sleeping people with his cane to wake them up.
He starts shepherding them. He's like,
he starts hurting the people.
Ooh, he's making noises, sheepherder noises. So funny. Larry looks out the window. He's the lookout for Twinkasetti, and Twinkasetti's coming. He's early, Larry says. Everyone gets up, and they all climb into this big, giant tent in the middle of the store to hide. It's not really the most conspicuous hiding place. But Balky finally gets everyone herded in there and runs to the tent, and Larry leaps in at the last second, zips it closed. Just before Twinkasetti walks into the store, he turns to hang his head on the wooden statue, and we hear him go, you know what's funny? He goes, they left the lights on again. I could get chimpanzees to do that, and they'd be better company. But he didn't notice that the door was also just wide open. Like it wasn't locked, and the lights were on.
And then we hear that old, like, vaudevillian music, the same kind we heard back in the baseball episode in the outdoor montage. We're hearing this music because while Twinkasetti's back is turned, the tent starts walking and moving across the floor. Right? So that's the pairing with the vaudeville music. Twinkasetti turns around once, the tent stops. And then he turns his back again, and the tent starts moving again. And then he turns around again, he catches them, and he's like, freeze. He caught them, and he goes, come out, everyone come out. So Balky unzips the tent, and they all start filing out one by one, and he's greeting them, each one of them with like snarky good mornings. And then Mrs. Schlegelmilch comes out, and he goes, Schlegelmilch, and she goes, rodent.
Schlegelmilch. Why were they moving? What was the point of that? I don't understand why they were even
Were they
hiding.
trying to escape out the door?
Of course, Balky and Larry tell Twinkasetti it's his fault that they're sleeping there because he turned off the heat. Twinkasetti goes, I know it's my fault, and I'm sorry. What? Larry's like, I don't. And then he stops. He's prepared to continue arguing. He goes, wait a minute. Well, did you just say? And Balky goes, he turns to Balky and goes, who is this man? Twinkie is acting nervously. He says he wants to end their disagreement. I don't trust any of this. Meanwhile, The phone rings. Balky steps away to answer it as Twinkasetti continues to tell his tenants that he's willing to make a few repairs if they're willing to pay their rent today.
Oh, sudden strange apologetic behavior from Twinkasetti, and we soon find out why. Balky is behind the crowd holding the phone receiver, and he yells over, he says, Mr. Twinkasetti is a friend for you, Mr. Vinny the Finger. And Twinkasetti makes this crazy, like, gasp, but it's an exhaling gasp, like he's catching, like he can't breathe, and he goes,
almost like he had a heart attack. Yeah.
And he clutches his chest and he goes, I'm not here, turnip. Balky puts the phone back to his ear and he says, I'm not here, turnip. Exactly the same way. It's very, very funny. His impression of Twinkasetti. And then we hear Balky say, oh, well, okay. Nice chatting with you, Mr. The Finger.
So Balky hangs up the phone, comes back to the group and to Twinkasetti and says, Vinny says he wants to take you fishing and to buy you a concrete vest. And he turns to Larry and goes, nice man. As Balky clearly doesn't get the terminology, but everyone else is starting to understand. Larry explains to Balky that Vinny is Twinkasetti's bookie, and Twink needs their rent money right now, and everyone starts reveling and gloating in their soon-to-be victory as Twinkasetti pleads with them. He goes, my life is at stake here. Doesn't anyone care? Nobody cares. Nobody answers. He goes, the silence is a knife in my heart.
Mrs. Schlegelmilch pushes her way to the front of the crowd. She is this tiny, she's like a shorter, older, cranky woman. She's dressed in a full sweatsuit. She's got her hood pulled over.
I love
and tightened
Schlegelmilch.
Around her hair.
She great.
Goes up to Twinkasetti, grabs him by the shirt and says, listen, Slug, I want my front door fixed by tomorrow. And Twinkasetti's very nervous. He goes, you got it, Schlegelmilch. And then other people start following up with their demands. I want this. I want this. And Twinkasetti's like, okay, to all of them. Because he's desperate by now.
Yeah.
And so they're all cheering and celebrating. And Twinkasetti's like looking a little bit relieved.
Yeah.
And they're like ready. They're all happy that they've won. But Balky stops them. And he says, we have not won. He has not given us everything on the list.
Whoa.
And Twinkasetti gets upset. He's like, Bartakamus, if I gave you everything on that list, I wouldn't have any more money for anything else. And Balky does this funny, like, rolling of his eyes and, like, mock spitting on the ground. He goes, Pah. He goes, what do you think? I just fell off the turnip truck? And he says, well, I didn't. I jumped off with my own 2 feet.
He's the master of his destiny.
Yes. So Balky starts listing more things from their list that they want, and Twinkasetti like is hesitant, but he okays the first thing. Then Balky says another thing, and then he barks. He goes, and then he goes, okay, in that Twinkie bark. And then after the Balky lists a third thing, and then Twinkasetti says, you're pushing me. And then Balky threatens to call Mr. The Finger. He says, I'm going to call Mr. The Finger. And Twinkie's like, okay, but that's it. And the tenants are satisfied and happy. And Twinkasetti turns to Larry and he says, now get Norma Ray out of here. And he leaves to go to his office. Now that is a reference to Norma Ray, which was a 1979 American drama film.
I did not know what this reference was.
Yeah. Well, I knew it just had a sound that it was something about organizing and union
labor
leaders.
And, yeah.
But it was Norma Ray was the name of the film, which followed a character called Norma Ray, who was a factory worker in North Carolina who became involved in trade union activities due to poor working conditions in the factory. And it was actually based on a true story of a woman named Crystal Lee Sutton. And Norma Ray was played by Sally Field.
Sally Field won 1980 Best Actress Oscar for Norma Ray.
For Norma Ray.
Yeah, this is an Oscar-winning movie. I may have to check it out. That's a good one.
So everyone is satisfied. Twinkasetti's like, get Norma Ray out of here. He's satisfied. I mean, he's like okay with it, but he's not going to lose his knees to Vinny the Finger. But Balky is not satisfied because there are still more things on the list. And he says, we can fight. We can hold out. We can win. But everyone starts leaving. They're like, we have to get to work or go look for work, says the old guy. And Balky tries to get them to stay and demand more things. And Larry just tells him it's over. And Balky sits down in that little like hairstylist chair thing in the shop. And he looks sad.
The next scene starts with them entering the apartment as Balky and Larry come in. Larry is happy because the heat is on and he can't see his breath anymore. That's a win, clearly, but Balky is not feeling the win. He goes straight over to the fireplace and then just like squats in front of it. And Larry's like, what are you doing? Balky goes, I must sit among the ashes. He goes, I am humiliated. I make a fool of myself. Larry gently picks Balky up out of the fireplace. He goes, no, you made a lot of people very happy, Balky.
And then we hear the music, which means it's lesson time.
And there is music this time, so
Yes.
I knew, here's the lesson. Start
Yes,
paying
we
attention.
didn't have to guess this time.
This is explicit.
Balky doesn't understand why everyone's happy because to Balky, he feels
They
like
lost.
they lost
Yeah.
because they didn't get everything on the list.
Yeah, I could see his point.
And Larry says, no, they didn't lose because Twinkacetti is going to spend 2 months making a bunch of repairs. And he's like, we never planned to get everything on the list. Now, Balky's confused. He's a little, he doesn't understand. He said, but cousin, you said to Mr. Twinkacetti that we will not quit until we get everything. And I want to do what you said. And Larry says, that's called negotiating. You ask for more than you want, so you get what you need. And Balky says, then why don't you just ask for what you need? And Larry says, because you won't get it. And Balky says, you're right, I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Very good wordplay. But this little bit about negotiating is interesting because to me, in my experience, people in other countries are far better at haggling for things than Americans tend to be.
There's no set prices. If you go anywhere else, you can kind of negotiate. But maybe not in Meepos, it's so small, he gets a lesson here. But also, this is why I'm bad at negotiating. I was always bad at negotiator. So I learned something too. It's very helpful.
So Larry assures Balky that Balky has done a great job. He got them more than they ever expected. And he says, he tells Balky he's a very good negotiator and he stood up to Twinkacetti. And then he says, this building is very lucky to have Balky Bartakamus living here. I know I'm better off. Okay, finally he's being nice to Balky
After
in
7
this episode.
jabs at Balky, he gets.
Yes.
But you know what? It's a sitcom, right? It's cheesy dialogue over the top, whatever. But the sincerity at the end of these episodes,
it was very sweet.
That Marklin Baker and Balky both always put into the thing, like it gets me in the feels every time, man.
Yes,
every time it's so
heartwarming.
sincere and lovely. So suddenly, Marianne just walks in that door. She didn't knock or anything.
No, she just walked
opens
into
the
their
door
apartment.
and lets herself into the apartment. She goes, "Thank you so much." And Larry's like, "Well, there's no problem." But she goes, "I wasn't talking to you." And Larry goes, "I knew that." And she goes to Balky. She goes, "You were magnetic." And Balky looks to Larry all dreamy. He goes, "Yeah, she called me a magnet."
And then Marianne goes, you've got guts, Balky. I like that in a refugee. Okay, and then there's like a big audience laugh, but like, I don't know what's funny about that. He's not a refugee. Is it funny that she thinks he's a refugee?
Listen, this is the 80s. We thought all Australians were like Crocodile Dundee.
That's true.
And it's
That's true.
Marianne, not the brightest bulb, as you see in this next exchange where she invites Balky up to her place for breakfast. She goes, "You want to come up to my place for breakfast? Would you like that?" And Balky goes, "Does a sheep like a potato root?" And then Marianne just has a dumbfounded
stares
look
off into space like, huh?
And he goes, "That means yes, you little lamb kebab," as he kisses her hand. And she leads him out the door.
And then Balky and Marianne start to walk out. And as they pass Larry, Balky says to Larry, don't wait up. I'm going to negotiate with her.
Oh, my.
Oh, my goodness.
Well done. Well
Clutching
done.
my pearls.
Well,
What?
Balky.
This is breakfast time. Like
7 in the morning.
what? Okay, this is a little
Hey,
too mature for this show.
Balky is a little mature, but Balky is a good negotiator. Also, as we have learned.
Also, what does he think negotiating means? Because he's the
don't
one
know.
that misses all the innuendo usually. Also, like, I guess they're dating now. They never set up the beginning of these relationships, but they're kind of
there was the
coupled off slowly.
kiss on the cheek last episode, and now they're negotiating at breakfast, so it's moving along. Lovely.
Yes, so I thought that was a bit much at the end. And that was the last line before the credits. That was just the punch.
I mean, again, for a family primetime show, if you're sitting around
that
watching
was a
with your
little
family,
edgy,
you're
a
like,
little
"Ugh,
racy.
I'd be a little nervous sitting next to my mom here.
I'm going to negotiate.
Oh, what
with
did he
her.
mean, negotiate? Just shut up and read your book.
And roll credits. Okay, we have a few things to talk about. We hinted at them. Now we're going to go back. Jennifer and Marianne, let's talk about them.
Well, so we definitely know they live in the building now.
And they're
for
comfortable.
Sure.
They live close enough to their apartment is close enough that they're comfortable
walking around in a towel.
Walking around in their towels.
And
yeah.
I feel like Balky has gotten a little bit farther than Marianne than maybe Larry has with Jennifer.
Also, Susan is still around.
Okay, let's just dive into that, okay?
Okay, tell me your
Susan,
theory.
here's the thing. I thought Susan was gone, and I've been obsessed with Susan. Susan appears in this episode, and for the last time in the series.
Are you sure this time?
For sure.
Okay.
Her last appearance also being the first time she appears with Jennifer and Marianne in the same episode. Susan, of course, is played by actress Lise Cutter, and her name appears in the credits before the show as it did in the first 6 episodes. They don't, of course, explain why she left. Doesn't matter. But maybe, Jennifer and Marianne were coming in, and so they just didn't have room for another female friend. But here's my theory.
Listen, it was 1986. They didn't have room for more than 2 female characters on any show. It wasn't allowed back then.
It's already too.
And it almost still isn't allowed, but...
Yes, listen, we don't have enough female writers to write more than one girl character at a time.
Oh, we do. They're just not getting hired.
No, they're not. Paula A. Roth, she got work.
Yeah.
Here's my theory, though. Watching the dingy basement scene, when you see Susan now. So now here's Susan, who was a woman whose costuming was always very light, airy clothes. Remember, she wore a name tag.
Yeah, name tag.
We guessed that she may be a nurse or some kind of caretaker, but always light, airy, light colors. Now, suddenly, in this dark, dingy basement, you see Susan in a dark, like green sweater.
Yes,
baggy,
this is true.
right? It's baggy. She got dark pants on. She's at the back of the room, away from Jennifer, Marianne, and Larry. This is my Susan theory. I think once Jennifer moved into the building and Larry got obsessed, he ghosted Susan, and Susan always had a thing for Larry. But when Jennifer came in and she wasn't getting any more attention, she went complete like emo. Like she started buying Sylvia Plath novels and watching like Single White Female. I don't know. She just went like angry a little bit. This is why you see her at the end wanting to string up Twin Cassetti with the mob. She's using that. I don't know. I'm completely speculating.
Jennifer also wanted to attack Twin Cassetti.
Yeah, but not as badly. It seemed like Susan.
Okay, in this theory
had a
of
lot more
yours,
rage. Yeah.
who ghosted who? No, who friend zoned whom? Did Larry friend zone Susan, or did Susan friend zone Larry before Jennifer turns up?
It was that thing that happens where both sides kind of friend zone each other accidentally because you don't know. But then Jennifer was a soul connection to Larry, obviously, because I must have her. And Susan's like, this girl moves in, and now you don't even say hello, Appleton.
That's true.
All right, the hell with you. And she's wearing dark clothes now.
Okay, so that is Imran's theory about Susan.
That's what you think, listener.
If you're listening to this and you have strong feelings, let us know. Write in, send us some feedback. What do you think about this theory? What is your theory about Susan versus Jennifer and Marianne?
I will miss Susan.
Let's hear them. We have to explore the possibilities. Also in this episode, we have a couple Dimitri appearances, which are always delightful. And we had talked about before, like, was it someone's job to do the Dimitri costumes? Because that would be a fun job.
This one's an easy one. Just get some earmuffs, put it on Dimitri.
Yeah, so we see him in the opening scene with the earmuffs on. Sorry, in the middle of the episode, second act, with the earmuffs on, being cold. And then also at the end of the episode, he's there again, sitting on the couch next to.
I love that spot. The Dimitri game is always fun when they hide him.
Like Waldo.
Another great character we got introduced to that we will never see again, unfortunately, is Schlegelmilch.
Mrs. Schlegelmilch.
I love Mrs. Schlegelmilch. This is her one and done appearance. But they would mention her. They're going to mention her name, I guess, later. Because Schlegelmilch is just a great name. This was played by actress Mary Gillis. And she went on to have great guest appearances in Full House and Mr. Belvedere, Married with Children, The Golden Girls, The Wonder Years, Sabrina, The Teenage Witch, Becker, Scrubs, Everybody Loves Raymond. You've probably seen
all
Mary
these
Gillis
80s
everywhere.
actors that are have these little side roles end up being in so many other shows. This is also this episode is the only time we ever see any other part of the apartment building.
Yeah, this
at
first
least the
building
one
that
we
they're
know
in.
thus far.
We just seen the outside and their apartment.
Yeah, but now we saw the basement, and it won't be the only time we see the basement.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see the basement again.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
But this was the first time we saw another part, and it's not impressive. It doesn't impress me.
There's a pool table back
go.
there, so you could go down and have a couple of games, hang out with the guys if you
Gross.
wanted.
It looks gross down there.
Another great character actor from the 80s and the 90s, that the old guy yelling things from the back, that dude's name was Bob Larkin. He played Max. His name was Max, who was sitting next to Susan. He was a regular on Boy Meets World. Remember Janitor Bud? I think I remember the janitor from Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
He was the janitor, and he was also on Alf, Mama's Family, Wonder Years, ER, tons of other things.
Yeah. Okay, so those were some interesting notes. Now, let's do a recap of our favorite Balky Larry phrases. Balky, of course, tells Larry, "You reek all the time."
That's a great line.
Which was very funny. And then we talked about his retelling of the Boston Tea Party. They
Dip his
protest by they get
teabags.
together, they dip his tea bags in the filthy, dirty harbor water.
He didn't fall off the turnip truck. He jumped off with his own 2 feet. Don't be ridiculous.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
Just said the one time.
Yeah.
And then some of the catchphrases, of course, I love whenever he goes, wow.
Where do I come up with
That's
them?
great. I also like the I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. Other common running jokes and gags that we see in this episode is when the old Larry talks over Balky to get him to do something. Balky knows it's going to end badly, and
Always
he's trying
great.
to tell him, but
Always
Larry
funny.
doesn't let him, and then it blows up in Larry's face. We saw that with the garbage disposal.
Larry sniffing in the air like he did in the Vegas episode. That was the last time we saw him sniffing.
Yes. And then Larry shrugs off a ridiculous misunderstanding question from Balky and just gives him
I forgot.
like a fake answer, so he doesn't have to explain something.
And then
which was
Balky sitting among the ashes. I guess this is the first time he's going to do this again also. Next time he's humiliated.
yes, this also happens again in the future.
It's a custom among Meepos for humiliation.
Okay, that brings us to the segment of our show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, in which we discuss if this story happened today, how would things be different? This is an episode about democracy and protesting for your rights.
Yeah, very interesting.
Which was a bit chilling to watch. If you're listening to this, it's a little bit in the future, but we are actually recording this episode in the middle of January 2021, and in recent weeks and months,
the past year we've seen
and years, protests have been a big deal in our country. But of course, just less than 2 weeks ago, there was a big protest that happened at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. So it was a bit chilling to watch and analyze this episode and think about Balky's appreciation for democratic principles in the midst of current events happening now in 2020 and 2021.
It's a wild juxtaposition. In fact, really, the lesson he learns there, right? He kind of saw mob rule. An angry mob get what they want. That was, and then like,
No,
this is the lesson.
I didn't
Is
see it
what
that
he's
way.
learning?
The
No?
angry
Okay.
mob was stopped.
Oh, they
Larry
were.
stopped the angry
Yes.
mob and
Okay,
encouraged
yes.
them to do it peacefully
To do it
and
the right way.
productively and in
Yes.
an organized way, and list their demands and do it in a right process. So it wasn't the angry mob that
Okay,
the
good
lesson was.
point.
The angry mob doesn't get what they want.
Get what they want.
But to Balky, he was very excited to be part of something so American.
Yeah.
So related, like a pillar of American democracy, and that this is a protest. I read about it in my history class and my citizenship class, and now I get to be part of it,
Fighting for your
and of
civil
course
rights.
that still holds true. I mean,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
last in the last year, we've seen in our country protests that have been peaceful and protests that have not been peaceful. Things that have made change and things that are slowly making change and things that tried to make change, but in very sort of wrong, not peaceful ways. So it was just, I don't know. I'm not trying to make a conclusion or make any statements, but it was chilling to watch that this episode came up for us in this time.
Absolutely. So the other thing probably that would change nowadays, if you have a complaint of someone or services or someone is cheating you and taking advantage of you, you can very easily destroy them on social
Twitter.
media. Yes, all
Tweet
types.
shaming.
Yelp, social media, whatever. Bad reviews left and right. I wonder if this happened now, would they have taken that route? They're like, everyone just tweet bad things about Twinkasetti until he relents.
Shame Twinkasetti.
Yeah.
If Twinkasetti had like a landlord, like business account or something, they could leave bad Yelp reviews. They could report him to, authorities or whatever, business bureaus. But in the beginning, Larry says he even wrote him a letter about these complaints. That wouldn't happen today. He would tweet shame Twinkasetti, or he would send photos or videos of all or they would all publicly post on a Facebook group or something, all the videos, or they would call like BuzzFeed News or the local patch and be like, this guy sucks. Like, look at all these videos look at the conditions we're living in. He doesn't fix them. So they try to go viral. They would try to go viral to get Twinkasetti to fix things and issue an apology.
And he wouldn't be able to hide. It just makes you realize like how much these slumlords could get away with back in the day when they really had nobody to talk to that would listen to you. And a letter, like you said, it's not going to do anything.
And then, of course, Balki, we talked about how Balki knows how to fix everything.
Yeah, he's super handy.
If he didn't, he would easily be able to learn how to fix everything by watching YouTube videos or Googling the answers. Anybody can fix anything now.
I fixed a couple of things around the house that I was like, oh, that's all you have to do? Why didn't I watch this video
you can learn
5 weeks ago?
anything on YouTube. Yeah, it's really brilliant. So things like that. What else?
Well, now if he wanted to threaten him for an expensive cup of coffee as leverage, you'd have to be like $50.
Yes.
Or $100. Well, there's the magic
number. Because, of course, $10 for a cup of coffee is not exactly unreasonable in 2021.
Nobody's blinking
It's a little high
anymore.
for a regular coffee, but it's not unreasonable to walk into a coffee shop and leave having spent more than $10.
Ordering frappuccinos is like $15. But no, it's not. Yeah, you're totally expected to drop that much with tip, whatever.
But literally, that was the first thing I thought when Twinkasetti said it cost $10. I'm like, what are we in 2021?
Starbucks prices.
Okay. I heard that we have a bunch of shout outs today.
Get out of the city.
Yes, we do. I wanted to make one note for our listeners regarding shout outs. You may or may not know, in our show notes, we always post the date we record the episode, and then the published date is in the episode. So we are a few weeks ahead, right? Yeah, don't worry. Send in your comments. We will read everything. Trust us. At this early stage of our podcast,
yes,
whatever comes in, we're sharing. You just have to wait a few weeks, and we'll catch up in real time.
So you will hear your name get shouted out, or your handle, your social media handle, but it'll be a few weeks later. Because we're recording a few weeks in advance.
But we'd love to hear from you guys. And, sister, we got our first legit email. Oh, my God, from a listener named Tasha. Tasha wrote in and said, "Hi, guys. Loving the podcast. Your enthusiasm, or as Balki would say, enthusiasm, is evident and quite contagious. It's really fun to hear you two rewatch the show. You both do a good Balki accent as well." Wow.
And it will only get better.
That's a huge compliment. She says, "Although I was very little when the show first aired, she was 3. It is one of my earliest and fondest memories. The first episode I remember loving was Happy Birthday, Baby. Anyway, keep up the great work, Tasha." Thank you so much for writing in.
Thank you so much, Tasha. What a lovely note. This is really great to hear. It really means a lot to us.
I'm so glad people are enjoying just hanging out. We're going over the show, having a good time, putting in our observations, and the Balki accent, definitely going to
We will get better at it, but it's good to know we're off to a good start. We also have some notes from our Instagram followers.
Yeah.
May and Kate on Instagram says, "Your podcast is so wonderful. Exclamation mark is so wonderful. Started it over again with my mom and my daughter who both love Perfect Strangers. Thank you so much, May and Kate, for not only listening to our show, but sharing it with your mother and your daughter.
So she means she started our show and she's listening as a family. We have families gathering around listening to us. Wow, that's amazing.
Maybe she means that, or maybe
she means she started the show over. Either way, we're gonna we're gonna imagine the whole May and Kate family sitting down around the iPod and like old timey radio and listening.
We love you, May and Kate, and your mom and your sister and your daughter.
Yes, the whole
and your
family.
Sister, who you didn't mention, but we love her too.
And on Instagram, Wit03279. I believe this is our friend Whitney who had she wrote in also a few weeks ago.
Okay.
She commented on the Vegas episode, Babes in Babylon. She goes, the Vegas episode. This one and another episode of Perfect Strangers are my two top favorites.
I can't wait to find out what the other favorite one is. But thank you so much, Wit03279.
Over on Twitter, something really great happens. I got to shout this guy out. Chris Van Vliet, who is a 4-time Emmy-winning TV host. This dude has 37,000 followers on Twitter. Okay, Sophia. He tweeted, tag a podcast you think people should start listening to today. And Richie at my thrill _MAG mage, my thrill mage, he replied to Chris saying, at Dance of Joy Pod, this is the podcast we have all been waiting for.
What?
Unbelievable.
Get out of the city.
Thank you.
So there you go, folks. You've seen it on the Twitters. This is the podcast you've all been waiting for. 37,000 people got this message.
He's trying to do like a Jedi mind trick on Twitter. This is the podcast you have been looking for. And everyone just subscribe. Speaking of which, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the show, because next week, sister, what happens?
Balky Claus.
Balky Claus.
We are having Christmas time with Larry and Balky.
It's actually the return of Balky Claus, but in full costume this time.
Yes.
Remember, in the Czech episode, he had called himself Balky Claus.
Oh, he did. Yes. But this is a Christmas time Balky Claus.
Oh, my God. It's going to be great.
Thank you so much for listening to us. If you're having a good time, please continue to visit us at danceofjoypod.com. We have all our podcast links, all the places you can find it, all the links are there. All our social media links are there. We're at Dance of Joy Pod on all the platforms. Send the link to your friends, your coworkers, your bosses, your cleaning lady. Send it around. Share the show. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and a review in Apple Podcasts. It would be wonderful.
More importantly, here's the most important thing. Subscribe. Click that subscribe button. Click the play button. And like Sophia said, share it with your coworkers, pets, groomers, aunts, niece, and anybody else.
Share it with the National Guard members who are in your state's capitals.
Right. They're in all capitals protecting us. Share it with anyone who's turned on to Perfect Strangers for the first time or is revisiting it. It's a great show. Thanks for listening. And now we must do...
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy!
Hey, 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 hey.